Will Germany's conservative CDU-CSU continue to keep up that firewall against the far-right Alternative for Germany as they face a super election year in 2026? And how much is German democracy under pressure as the German Chancellor declares that the rules-based international order is essentially suspended for now? I speak to his chief whip in Parliament, Jens Spahn. With me is Jens Spahn, the leader of the conservative CDU-CSU parliamentary group of German Chancellor Friedrich Merz's party. Welcome to DW. You've pretty much come straight from a meeting that lasted over the weekend of your conservative blog to discuss how you want to tackle regional elections next year and how you want to deal with a far-right alternative for Germany here in Germany. There's a lot of talk of the so-called firewall. Are there any cracks in that firewall towards the AfD?
Well, first of all, we want to concentrate on ourselves and actually what we have to offer to the people. And now, since we're in government, since, what is it now, 5.5 months with the new Chancellor Friedrich Merz, actually our strategy is we want to make a difference in people's life just by taking decisions here in Berlin, political decisions that must make a difference to bring down irregular migration, and we have brought it down by more than 60%. But of course, you know that statistics, people need to feel it in their life that we have made a difference when it comes to, for example, affordable rents, affordable housing. We have passed several laws to have more houses built, to have more offers so that prices might go down. But of course that takes some time. So people don't feel it yet, the decisions we've taken. Or finally, and most important, to bring back growth. We are in the third year of recession here in Germany. We have cut taxes, corporate taxes. We have given incentives for investments here in Germany. But again, it takes some time till people can feel it and see new jobs or better wages. So actually our main strategy has been, remains to make a difference and by that to regain trust. That is what it is all about. So yeah, the government just needs to deliver.
Well, your Chancellor and party leader Friedrich Merz caused quite a bit of controversy here in Germany by saying that people need to be able to see it on the streets and that the problems of migration were visible on the streets, of irregular migration. And a lot of people with migratory backgrounds feel offended by this here in Germany, don't they?
Well, my experience is that people here in Germany, that live here in Germany, if they have a migratory background or not, actually all of them want to see that we bring down irregular migration, and they want to see that, you know, on marketplaces around a train station we do see that there are especially young men where women feel unsafe, that are aggressive, that there is drugs that are sold. And so actually many cities in special places, train stations for example, marketplaces have changed. And many people, most people I know, as I said, migratory background or not, actually have the same desire that we fix that we bring back, you know, this feeling of safety when you are in a train station, for example, or that as a gay couple that you can just walk through all streets of Berlin, and that there are not certain suburbs where you can't be yourself. If you have a migratory background or not, if you're gay, you won't be able to show it in a city like Berlin, and there are streets where you can't. Or there are streets here in Berlin where you don't see any women. There's only men on the street, and that obviously has changed the way the streets are. And my experience is actually most people want that to change again.
But that straight association with migration, a lot of people find offensive with migratory background, but you know...
No, you know, my experience is many people with a migratory background actually have the same desire for control, that we know who is to enter the country, that we keep a criminal list, that we keep all criminal action down, that we that we actually have a feeling of a liberal, open society wherever you go in every city. And that is actually what makes Germany so attractive for people to come here, to live here, and to be a part of our society, is that we are a liberal, open country. But that is under pressure through irregular migration and through too often failed integration. And of course, that needs to be addressed. People see it, so you need to speak about it. And more important, it needs to be solved. You need to make a difference. And actually what we need to do is that we see this as a common task, a common wish of people with or without a migratory background. All those who want a prosperous society actually are on the same side.
And the Conservative bloc, which is in a coalition with the Social Democrats, you've gone through some lengths to essentially take away that issue of migration from the far-right Alternative for Germany. Now, it's polling very well, particularly in some regions like Mecklenburg, West Pomerania and Saxony-Anhalt, which will have regional elections this coming year. They're polling around 38–40%. And we keep hearing from Chancellor Merz that it really is a standoff between your party and the AfD, that really is the core fight between the middle and the far right. How are you preparing for that? Because some in your party say it's time to speak to the AfD.
Well, the AfD, as it is pro-Putin, it's pro-Russian. I mean, they are like, we call it in German, I don't know if that is an English saying, like the fifth wheel of Russia.
The wagon,
here in Germany. And I mean, we are helping the Ukraine to defend itself against the Russian aggressor. And here in Germany, we do have a party that has many people in their ranks, in their leading ranks, that are pro-Putin, pro-Russian, that are anti-Semites, that are racists. So what we will do, and perhaps do even more, is to address that, to make that clear, and at the same time try to speak to their voters and try to convince them that we will fix the problems. And the best way to convince them, by the way, is just to fix the problems. And one is migration. It's not the only topic that needs to be addressed. The other one is growth. I mean, 3 years of recession, of course. Germany and Germans have become poorer in the past 3 years. You see our industrial core, automotive, chemical industry, steel, is about to leave the country. Investments are made abroad. And people see that and feel that. And are worried if they might lose their job, have perhaps even lost their jobs. Families are worried. So actually it's not just migration. There are several big issues that needs to be addressed, needs to be solved. And I'm very much convinced it needs longer than just 2 weeks or 5 months. But once we see the results and people can not see the press conference in Berlin, but really feel it in their life, that things have turned to a better, then we will regain trust. That's the approach.
Now, you are a transatlanticist. You are, I think it's fair to say, a friend of the former ambassador to Germany during the first Trump administration, Richard Grenell. And he just harshly criticized your own party for describing the interests of those big tech companies and their intentions of wanting to take intellectual property as vampirism. That's how it was described by the State Minister for Cultural Affairs. And he sees that as an attack on the big corporates, the big tech companies in the United States. Is that a standoff that Germany should be having and the Europeans should be having with the United States?
Well, that is a discussion that has been going on for many years already. That's not new. The question.
Well, we had Merz describe this as a question of national sovereignty.
Yes, of course, but it's not new.
Yeah.
That we have, I don't know, Google, Facebook, the big platforms that are here in Europe, of course, with their business as well. And the question if EU regulation is taken for granted for them, that they need to obey to it, actually is a question that is many, many years old as well. So I would say, actually, of course, who wants to do business here in Europe and the European Union needs to meet the EU regulation and the EU standards. There's no doubt about that. And at the same time, of course, the US government, as a German government, would fight for German companies abroad on markets elsewhere. The US government is fighting for their companies. And if necessary, it's done in public. I would prefer it to be done in negotiations between the European Union and the US and the companies. But of course, every now and then you can see emotions in these debates.
We also heard Friedrich Merz speak of an end of a global order that is ruled by international law, for now at least. Do you see the Trump administration as more of an opportunity or a risk for this very order that Germany actually is still trying to uphold with its partners?
Well, the biggest risk to the international order and to international peace and freedom is Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. And we see that they feel threatened by liberal democracies in their neighborhood. Russia feels threatened by Ukraine, Iran feels threatened by Israel, North Korea feels threatened, and China by South Korea and Taiwan. So actually the biggest threat to the international order are these autocratic regimes. And we, within NATO and within the Western countries, actually we are in this together to fight for our freedom, to fight for peace, to do whatever is possible to get back to peace. And actually, one has to say, President Trump was successful. We have to see where it goes now, but for the first step, that the hostages are finally free, that there is a truce, that is actually what President Trump achieved. And one has to say, only President Trump could achieve. Europe was not able to, obviously.
How hopeful are you about a peace in Ukraine with that meeting expected between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin?
Again, it's only the US, it's only the US president that can make that difference. It can have, perhaps from the other side, the Chinese president, so from different angles, but that are the two powers that can make that difference and bring a peace or first step truce for Ukraine. And so I actually, first of all, I'm glad that there are talks. That's the first step. But of course, then it needs to be talks that make sure that Ukraine is on a strong level and that there is negotiations that actually see the interests of both sides, and especially the sovereignty of Ukraine, and that see who actually was the aggressor. So we will see where that leads to. We have seen that summit in Anchorage, actually, and we all were hoping that something might get out of it. And the only result we saw, if you want to call it that way, is that Putin actually fought the war even harder, with Kiev every night attacked, for example. And so actually we need, of course it's good to see the initiative, and it's only the US that can make that difference, but at the same time, so far we see Putin is not willing to have peace. You know, here in Germany, many parties, many people say, let diplomacy finally speak. And what we see with all the diplomacy of the last months is that Putin is even doing it harder and attacking harder the Ukraine. It's him, it's Putin, who does not want peace. And we will see if we see now any difference. There's always hope, but right now, I don't see it yet.
You already touched on the attack on democracies. How tough a ride do you feel you've had as parliamentary group leader so far? Because in English, the term is chief whip. You didn't manage to whip up a majority together to get the judges elected here for the Constitutional Court in the first round. That didn't used to be a politicized process.
Well, there was no vote. Every vote we had in Parliament, we had a majority.
You cancelled the vote.
We cancelled
so
the
you
vote,
didn't take it to the vote because you knew you didn't have a majority. So that is a procedural difference, but essentially there was no majority, and it politicized a process that so far here in Germany was a very smooth one and hardly noticed by a public. And then now, this past week, you faced somewhat of a rebellion from young MPs who don't necessarily want to see the pension reform go through. At the same time, there is a debate about whether this much needed, as everybody agrees, law to reinstate some form of conscription can go ahead.
But that debate is in the Social Democratic Party. So we see, of course, I mean, the majority is very small. Yes. Compared to past grand coalitions, as we used to call them. And at the same time, the right-wing extremist as well as the radical populist left have grown. And we see that the work in parliament, debates in parliament, and I mean it's representative for society itself. In society has changed. There's the risk of more polarization, and we see that in debates in parliament as well. And yes, it's at least not as easy as it was, if it ever was easy, to get these majorities together. But still, that's what we need to do. Because, you know, both parties, our Christian Democratic Party and the Social Democratic Party, we are in this together. We will gain together, we will lose together when there is the next election. And what we see in the polls right now is we are losing because of the too much of public arguments. Of course you need to debate, and of course you need to make clear where you stand. But in the end, we are one coalition, one government. We need to act together and we need to deliver. And I'm always coming back to that. You know, with every failure there was so far, the only good alternative, there's always another alternative, but the best alternative, the good alternative, is to try again to make this work. And if I see what we already have decided here in Parliament, the first tax cut for corporates in almost 20 years, migration 60% down, many incentives, energy costs down for growth, social reforms. This government is delivering, will be delivering, but obviously we need to focus more on what we deliver and less argue about what still needs to be done. And that is a lesson, hopefully, everyone takes from the first months.
I think we both agree that the social reforms you've promised are far from already being delivered. Because you want them on basis. You've started, fair enough. But you've been here before. You've been in previous governments as well with the same party constellation. You were a minister under Angela Merkel, who and her brand of politics was stability. In fact, internationally, the whole German-style brand of politics is stability. So, just to close this, how stable is this German government right now?
Very stable, very much stable. And I mean, if you take the situation in the whole of Europe, it's the situation in France, the Polish difficult situation. Right now, from the big economies, the big countries in Europe, Germany is the most stable one politically. And that will remain so. I'm very sure. We all know actually what needs to be done and what our responsibility is. Is that easy? No. Will that always be, you know, in an easy way without any debate or arguing? No, for sure not. I can't promise that. But in the end, everyone knows what this is about. And I hope my Luxembourgian friends take it as I mean it, but we are not Luxembourg. We are Germany, the third biggest economy in the world. And what happens in Germany is very much influencing the rest of Europe and perhaps even more. And we are aware of that. And everyone is in this coalition. So besides all the noises, this is no honeymoon coalition, it's a working coalition. We know what our task is.
Okay, just finally then, we have an EU summit coming up. What's your biggest hope and what's your biggest concern from where you're sitting?
For the summit, my biggest hope is that finally we get rid of more red tape in Europe. We need to bring back the focus to competitiveness. That is what everyone is talking about, but it still needs to be delivered. And I hope that will be one of the main focuses. What worries me is that we stay aligned, all 27, when it comes to we are on Ukraine's side and Russia is the aggressor, no one else.
Jens Spahn, parliamentary group leader of the Conservative CDU in Parliament. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure.